Welcome to Draft Utopia. Chris Ransom, William Yanish here. Joseph Potter should be here at the top of the hour. He does not like calling in at 9 a.m. That's too early for him, and that's fine because whenever there's a good college football game at noon, I'm always going to start the show at 9, especially if I know we can't get through all the topics in 3 hours. It's just one of those things that I've mentally adjusted to over the years. If there's a good college football game at noon, like Iowa State, Kansas State today, Texas, Ohio State next week, I have to start the show. If I want to get through every topic,
Yes, sir.
I got to start earlier than usual. But I promise you, once we get to week 2 of the college football season in 2 weeks from now, we'll go back to the 10 a.m. slot because there's no good. At this point, the only good game for week 2 is Michigan, Oklahoma. That's the only ranked game at the moment. That could change. But on that note, we've wasted enough time speculating on this, so I'm going to jump straight into the Big 12 prospects for the 2026 NFL Draft. Oklahoma State, they don't have any prospects that I'm fond of. Them and Oklahoma State and I'm trying to think, Purdue are the two colleges that I think had the lowest only two Power 4 schools that did not have an NFL prospect on their respective teams.
Oklahoma State's a mess, man.
Yep.
After last year with Ollie Gordon and everything else, man,
it's been 17 years since the Mike Gundy said, "I'm a man, I'm 40" press conference. And if you went into his press conference and said, "You got no NFL prospects on your team," he'd be about as pissed as he was back then when he said, "I'm a man, I'm 40." And that was almost.
You better
20
get down to
ago.
some recruiting, man. Need to get down to some recruiting or something, I mean, like
their quarterback Cam Smith had 7 deflections for pass breakups. He's a senior, but there's already a lot of Cam Smiths in the NFL, and he's confusing. So I think the Dolphins have a corner named Cam Smith. That's why from South Carolina. That's why I brought that up.
Must have been a popular name a few years ago. My nephew's name is Cam, but it's Camaris, not Cameron. But
Yeah. West Virginia has 3 NFL prospects. They got Jaheim White in the transfer portal. That's the first name West Virginia has. Or is he? I thought Jaheim White was on another school last year. I'm double checking. Jaheim White, no, he was. I thought he was on another school, but no, Jaheim White was West Virginia's starting running back in 2023 and last year. So he's a true junior. 2-year starter at West Virginia. Jaheim White, probably their best playmaker on offense. I've got an 89 for potential on him. Fred Perry can play either safety role at strong safety or free safety. I've got an 89 on Freddie Perry. And Jamori Robertson, I have a 86 on for potential. So just looking at West Virginia, they do have a few players on defense. Jamori Robertson can play left end. He's a pure edge rusher, but he can play left end or 34 outside linebacker in either scheme. But he prefers to play left end against right tackles. But still, he can play in either side, either scheme. Next up, Arizona. I know we get the depressing teams out of the way. In West Virginia and Oklahoma State pretty quickly. But Arizona, this is a team we've mentioned on Draft Utopia and Under the Bleachers last year. Noah Fafita is their main guy back. They did lose Tatoria McMillan. They do have Ismail Mondi at running back. I've got an 87 on Fafita and Mondi. Luke Wysong, I've got an 86 for potential on. Trey Smith, their edge rusher, I've got an 86 for potential on him. And Dalton Johnson, strong safety, I've got an 85. So that's Arizona's roster in a nutshell. They're projected to finish is one of the third worst teams in the. And the crazy thing is they started 5-1 last year. At one point, they looked like they had a shot to get to the Big 12 championship, and then things fell apart.
I think that was running off of Fish's, team that he had here before he went to Washington, and I mean, Noah Fafita definitely has potential. But I still don't see him as a starter, but he will be an excellent NFL backup. His size is one thing that's very concerning. They call him, 5'10" or whatever, but yeah, it's he's a pretty small dude, kind of like Bryce Young. But, other than that.
Colorado Buffaloes, they lose Shedeur Sanders, but they gain Kadon Salter, the Liberty quarterback who transferred to Colorado from Liberty. They also have true freshman Julian Sayin competing for that job. So I don't know which – Coach Prime is not named a starter yet. There's 1 week to go. There's all these rumors, Coach Prime is going to go to Bama. No, even if Coach Prime turned Colorado into a 10-win team, I don't think he would go to Bama because, one, I don't think they would offer him the job. And two, even if they did, the only school I could see him leaving Colorado for is Florida State, and that's because Florida State's his alma mater. So
exactly.
That's why I don't think he would leave Colorado at this juncture. But I think Colorado's biggest asset is probably their offensive tackle tandem. Jordan Seaton is currently the number 1 left tackle in the 2027 NFL draft, and their right tackle, Xavier Hill. I've got a 90 out of 99 for potential on him, as well as Salter. But I was high on Salter last year, and Salter kind of burned me with Liberty.
Yeah.
So
I've never been too high on him.
Burn me again. I just am.
For sure. That's one player. I watched him play for Liberty and such. He flashed at times. We'll put it that way. But he's one of those ones that, like you said, will burn you, and it's just like that.
Liberty was one of the last group of 5 teams to be undefeated, but then they lost to a winless Kennesaw State team. And that was really what took them out of consideration to ever get into the top 25, to get in the playoff too. That loss right there. Colorado does return some talented players on defense. They have Jaheim Holtz at 86 for potential at defensive tackle. DJ McKinley's their number 1 corner. They go from Travis Hunter to DJ McKinley. And Carter Stout can play both strong safety as well as free safety. So I look at Colorado and I say to myself, all right, they're not in a great spot right now. DJ McKinley is a solid corner, and they add 6 transfers, including Wyoming and Central Florida starters to complement. So basically, I think DJ McKinley was a nickel corner last year to Hunter, and I believe they had another defensive back that got drafted or transferred. So now he goes from being the nickel to the number 1. Next team, Central Florida. Central Florida, they do have 3 good players.
They hate being called Central Florida.
Miles Montgomery takes over for RJ Harvey. And the crazy part is I had a starter grade on Harvey last year. I've got a starter grade on Montgomery right now. But he was probably the number 2 running back to Harvey. Not as much experience. Now he gets to be the bell cow. You have Neelick Kelly, probably the highest graded player in terms of upside with an 88 out of 99. This is just for potential. The floor grades are different. The floor grades are based off performance, and the potential grades are what the player can become if they develop. So like Cam Ward last year, we had a 91 on him at the end of the year, but an 89 at the beginning of the year, and for potential. And then the floor grade for Ward was very high because his production was very good for most of the season. And then it kind of cooled off those last few games. But yeah, Isaiah Reed's the corner on Central Florida. He's a former, I think Isaiah Reed's a former Brown corner. I think I'm double checking something with Central Florida, but I'm pretty certain that Isaiah Reed was first team Ivy League at Brown in 2023.
I love those smart kids, man.
Selection. So yeah, Isaiah Reed, really good corner at Brown, and he transfers to Central Florida.
That intelligence is absolutely, key to coming to Central Florida. And he came there to play football. He was at Brown for the academics, I'm sure. And yeah, dude, I love those smart guys. They show so much when it comes to football.
Yep. And Houston's up next. I'm looking for some notes on Houston. I forgot to list the exact position of one of the players on Houston, Dean Connors. I'm just trying to get the exact position. Oh, Dean Connors is a running back. All right. But yeah, Dean Connors.
Tanner Koziol. Sorry.
Yeah, Dean Connors is back at running back. You have Tanner Koziel. I've got a 92 for potential on Koziel and a 87 on Connors. Was William that showed me the tape of Koziel back in May before I double checked some stuff and ran the numbers there. But
The kid can absolutely play, man.
They got Connor Weigman taking over at quarterback. They've got a running back tandem of Rashawn Sanford, a sophomore, and Dean Connors, who had 12 starts at Rice last year. So they've got a quarterback from Texas A&M, a running back from Rice, and a tight end from Ball State. So they have been, I would argue Houston's been one of the 5 most active teams in the portal, and they got their left tackle from Western Kentucky too on top of that. So they have been super aggressive in the portal this year on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, that's just watching Tanner Koziel. I believe I had a second round grade on him. He's a huge target with an absolute, catch radius. I think he's like 6'7".
I mocked him the
something
Commanders
like
in the first round of my 2026 mock draft because
right
Zach Ertz is a free agent, and Jaden Daniels could use a tight end to stretch the field like Koziel.
Yes, he could.
Eddie Walls is another transfer that Houston got. He's from Florida International. We talked about the Florida International player, Eric Rivers, the wide receiver at Georgia Tech last week. There's a player from Wyoming that transferred, a middle linebacker, Mark Stampley, Wyoming player who plays a star. He transferred to Houston. So Houston with a lot of transfers, including Weigman. Carlos Allen, the nose tackle, is one of their returning players. So that's another guy to keep an eye on. And then Kansas, we talked about Kansas Wednesday a little bit on Under the Bleachers. But yeah, Jalen Daniels, they play Fresno State today. Jalen Daniels at quarterback. E.J. Warner, that's going to be the matchup to watch. And then Bryce Foster at center and Dean Miller at pass rusher. Those are the players I'm looking at scouting. Because Kansas State lost Mello Dotson and Kobe Bryant, their 2 stud corners last year. And I know everyone's saying, oh, they're going to be fine. They got DJ Graham from Utah State in the portal. I don't think it's going to be that easy to reload because they got a sophomore corner taking over as a true first-year starter, and they got DJ Graham from Utah State now taking over for Kobe Bryant. I think the secondary is going to have a lot more difficulty. But they still have Jalen Daniels. They still have Bryce Foster. They have some good pieces. And Bryce Foster, if you remember, he began his career at Texas A&M, transferred to Kansas last year. Kansas got Pooney, I believe, in the portal as well. And I think they got a Wisconsin tackle, too, in the portal as well that got drafted in the NFL draft. I don't think that was Pooney, but I think it was Logan Brown or something. So they've done a good job finding linemen in the portal. That's one thing I'll commend the Kansas Jayhawks for is their new stadium opens today. Nice. But yeah, Jalen Daniels has to ball out this year. He showed a lot of promise in the first half against TCU in Quentin Johnston's draft year before he got injured. He has to stay healthy, and he has to show out this year. He's got the talent to be the guy, but he hasn't shown it consistently.
Yeah, and that's his biggest problem, man. I watched him. My evaluation was called lightning in a bottle, and that's exactly what he was. But he flashed. He just wasn't, consistent about things. And just watching him play, he can absolutely be up there because I believe I had a second round grade on him as well. The kid can. He needs to take what they can give him so he can make it to the next level,
That's the thing. He has the talent and the upside of a second round quarterback, but he has the consistency of a 5th round quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's probably why he has a day 3 grade at the moment. And even though his ceiling's high, his floor is probably super low. maybe lower than Shadur's at this point. But yeah, Cincinnati, we'll get to the Cincinnati Bearcats next. I was actually at Cincinnati. I uploaded a video at the Cincinnati Bearcats Stadium while I was on my road trip. So not only did I get to see Ohio State, I got to see Cincinnati's stadium as well. Brendan Sorsby's the quarterback. I'm not high on Sorsby, but they do have some talent. This Cincinnati team, Gavin, they have Joe Royer at tight end. He's probably their best tight end. I'm thinking of the guy they had before Kelsey, Brent Selleck. Brent Selleck, Travis Kelsey. Cincinnati's had a factory of good tight ends. The Titans drafted a tight end out of Cincinnati in 2023. I forget his name, but Cincinnati's been a very good school for tight ends. Joe Royer, senior tight end, first team Big 12 last year, should be even better. They did lose Luke Kandra at right guard. There's a lot of people that are high on Gavin Gerhardt, their center, but Royer, I think, is the best player on their offense. I've got an 87 for Royer's potential. And then you got Corleone at defensive tackle. Matthew McDoom, he was the corner at Coastal Carolina last year. 10 deflections at Coastal Carolina. He's transferred to Cincinnati. And then you also have Max Fletcher, the punter. Max Fletcher was my number one ranked punter in last year's punter rankings for the NFL draft. So he'll probably remain in that role this year because last year is a sophomore redshirt, and they were saying he'd declare as a sophomore redshirt. This is saying he's a junior, so we'll see what happens with Mason Fletcher. Wait, I had Mason Fletcher as my number one punter, so I guess Max Fletcher's is your brother. So I had those two confused. Sorry, that's on me. But I thought they were the same guy, but they are brothers, and Max is the younger brother of Mason. So yeah, that's Cincinnati in a nutshell. The next team is BYU. They are going to start a true freshman at quarterback. BYU is, a true freshman, Bear Bachmeier, who originally signed with Stanford, is going to be their starting quarterback. Mainly due to Jake Retzlaff transferring, but they've got LJ Martin back at running back, Chase Roberts at wide receiver. I've got a 90 for potential on Roberts. I'm higher on Roberts than I was on Nakua, but Nakua took everyone by storm, so that's not a knock against Nakua. I'm very high on Roberts. We'll see what happens with BYU football this year, but I like Roberts. I like Martin. Keanu Tanu Vasa is their defensive tackle. He can play in any type of 34 scheme. They've got Jack Kelly at right outside linebacker, middle linebacker, and he could play 34 middle linebacker. And their other linebacker is Isaiah Glasker. So they have two returning starters at linebacker, and I believe their linebacker tandem is going to be one of the best in the country, as both Kelly and Glasker are considered NFL prospects for BYU this year. Glasker had 70 tackles last year. Kelly had 51. So there's some good stuff with Cincinnati. We're gonna get to Cincinnati next. But yeah, Cincinnati. My highest graded player on Cincinnati, I believe it's Bud Clark, and I'm quickly pulling up the Big 12 thumbnail here because I think we have Seton in the thumbnail. Jordan Seton, Sam Levitt, the Texas Tech quarterback, and yes, Bud Clark, the TCU free safety, Bud Clark. I have a 92 out of 99 for potential on Bud Clark. Bud Clark's a captain of the TCU defense. Bud Clark had 88 solo tackles, 10 deflections, and 8 interceptions from 2021 to 2023. Last year, he had 3 pass breakups and 3 interceptions. So, yeah, Bud Clark, stud free safety. Clark, I didn't move. I think I only had Caleb Downs was the only free safety I think I had in round 1 of my 2026 mock. I'm looking I'm looking that up right now to double check my intel. But yeah, after after yeah after Caleb Downs, I did not have safety in the first round, but after Caleb Downs of Ohio State, Bud Clark might be the best safety in the country. So I mean, this is a guy that I'm probably will put a second round. I'll probably put him in round 2 or 3 of my mock whenever I get around to that, assuming he has another good year. And if he doesn't, he could be a steal on day 3. But Bud Clark is a guy I really like entering his senior year. Probably the best player on TCU, if we're being honest. TCU also has Eric McAllister at wide receiver, who had 1,173 yards in 8 starts last as a freshman, and then he had 1,173 yards in 2 seasons at Boise State, and then he had 762 yards last year. But Eric McAllister is your best receiver on offense, and you have Josh Hoover. I have an 87 for potential on Josh Hoover, but we'll see what Hoover does. 30,949 yards, 66.5 completion percentage. Good numbers by Hoover, but I don't think Hoover's traits are translatable to the NFL. But we'll see what Hoover does. We'll see what TCU does. Okay, the next team that we're about to preview, Texas Tech. This is the team that had the most prospects. This is the team you mentioned in our top 25 show on Under the Bleachers that stood out to you. They stand out to me, too, in a big way. Behrin Morton's their quarterback. He is the Texas Tech. Okay, so then who the hell is number 10? If Morton's not number 10, I think it's Jacob Rodriguez. Jacob Rodriguez was the player listed in the thumbnail for Texas Tech for our show. Okay, so Jacob Rodriguez, but we'll get to the defense later. We'll talk about the offense first because this Texas Tech team is stacked, William. Lots of talent. Morton's their quarterback. Quentin Joyner takes over for Taj Brooks at running back. I've got an 86 on him for potential 87 on Morton. Virgil Douglas are 2 wide receivers that could be high-end starters if they develop properly. Terrence Carter is the tight end, and he's a junior. They also have John Carlos Miller, a senior tight end, for depth. So they have 2 draft-eligible tight ends. Vinny Sciuri at left guard, Sheridan Wilson at center, and Davian Carter at right guard. Very good interior offensive line. Pretty complete offense. The only weakness, Williams, probably an offensive tackle, but they have everything else that you want in an offense. And
yeah, for sure.
Tackles are juniors and seniors in the portal. They got a right tackle from Illinois State and a junior from North Texas and North Carolina. So their left tackle played for North Carolina last year. Their right tackle played for Illinois State, and they got both of them in the portal. They're both juniors and seniors. So
yeah,
Texas Tech is a pretty complete offense for the most part.
I love to see it because Behrin Morton is now another year removed from his AC joint being sprained or whatever. I believe that's what they said. But this kid, he has everything you want, but his sample size was so small. I can't wait to see him get out there and start slinging it. I mean, he's got potential that I think I had a third or fourth in climbing. He had a chance to really jump up this year, and it's one player that I see rising. That I haven't heard anyone say anything about.
And Morton had some dominant games as a freshman, but he also struggled with injuries, and then he started every game last year, became the first quarterback to do that since 2017 after the successor to Patrick Mahomes. And then Mahomes did that. So really, the list for guys to start every game, it's not a very long list. But yeah, the defensive side of the ball is where I think the bulk of the talent is. They have a very good edge rusher in David Bailey who can play left end, right end, 34 outside linebacker on either side. Lee Hunter can play defensive tackle as well as 34 nose tackle. Skylar Gill Howard can play defensive tackle as well as 34 defensive end on either side. Jacob Rodriguez, I've got a 91 for potential on Rodriguez, and I've got a 93 for potential on Bailey, but I think Rodriguez probably has the higher floor of the two. Rodriguez can play right outside linebacker at a 43, he can play 34 middle linebacker in a 34. Morian Horn is their corner. Bryce Pollock is the strong safety, and Cole Wisniewski is the free safety. So this team, very complete team on both sides of the ball. Texas Tech's schedule is brutal, though. They got to play Utah on the road. They've got to play Houston on the road. They've got to play Arizona State on the road, and they got to play Kansas State on the road. But if they can win enough games to make the Big 12 championship, I do believe they are this year's Big 12 champions. But again, the strength of schedule is brutal.
They went so far last year until the last few weeks, and then they had their losses. You know, I had them picked on my bracket. You know, to actually be able to do some damage. And like I said, another year removed from that, they put down a solid foundation, and they can absolutely take off. You know, take off and fly like the Red Baron.
Yep.
Baron Morton. Yeah. Other than that, you know, they lost Taj Brooks. He's another one who's in Cincy right now, you know, making a little bit of
Joyner
noise.
was the running back on the USC Trojans. They got him in the portal to replace Brooks.
That's a good move. You know, I mean, being out there with Lane Kiffin.
And David Bailey, the player that I'm super high on this year, he was at Stanford last year as an edge rusher. And he was a guy that some had going in the second, third round initially. But then he came back to school. So David Bailey.
That's likely a good move, man, to come back and practice your craft, you know.
I agree. But they're stacked. Next team is Kansas State. We talked about this team on Under the Bleachers. They've got Avery Johnson back at quarterback. Dylan Edwards takes over for DJ Giddens at running back. I mentioned Garrett Oakley as the X factor. I believe he will be the X factor against Iowa State today. Damian Lalio is the defensive tackle. But Austin Romaine is my favorite player on this defense. I have a first-round grade on Romaine. And I think Anthony Hill Jr. at Texas, who we're going to preview next week, and Romaine are the two best middle linebackers in college football. And this might be my favorite middle linebacker draft since 2018, when we had Roquan Smith and Edmonds and Fred Warner all in the same draft class. So, again, I think Kansas State, they should win today, but they got to play. Actually, Kansas State's schedule's pretty manageable. They got to play Baylor on the road. That'll be tough, but they get Arizona on the road, Central Florida at home, TCU at home. They get Kansas on the road, which could be a trap game. But they get Texas Tech at home. If they can beat Texas Tech at home, I think they can run the table. Oklahoma State on the road, Utah on the road, Colorado at home. I look at right now, I'm looking at Kansas State, and I'm saying they could be 12. They could be 12. They could be 8-4, but they could also be 12-0 depending on what they do with their schedule. Because if they win against Texas Tech, they win against Utah, they win against Kansas, they win against Iowa State, I think they do go 12-0. But they could easily lose all four of those games and be 8-4. And just in a Holiday Bowl instead of a Big 12 championship. So that's also on the table. But yeah, you got any thoughts on Kansas State? We already mentioned them on Under the Bleachers, but we didn't go in depth with the schedule. That's why I decided to do that before we got to Arizona State. And I'll do the same thing with Iowa State too.
Yeah, just Avery Johnson. You know, I mean, this kid, like I said, you can see that he can play, and he's another one that needs to, you know, put it over the top and come out. You know, I mean, that's about it.
Yeah, Romaine had 96 tackles at Kansas State last year, and he's excellent in both man and zone coverage. It's pretty rare for me to give a middle linebacker an A+ in both man and zone. I usually only grade middle linebackers on zone coverage alone, but Austin Romaine was just that good in coverage. It's like having an extra defensive back on your football field. So I think Kansas State has an advantage with Romaine. As long as Romaine and Johnson call the right plays, coaches call the right plays, and the players call those plays with their green dots and their helmets, I think they'll be okay. Arizona State is up next. Sun Devils. Sam Levitt's back at quarterback. Jordan Tyson's back at receiver. Daniel Kelly gave me credit for being ahead of the curve on him. I appreciate that. And Sam Levitt's one of the Arizona State player in the thumbnail, the final player. So the Big 12 thumbnail I posted had Sam Levitt, Jordan Seaton, the Colorado left tackle, Bud Clark, the TCU free safety, and Jacob Rodriguez, the Texas Tech right outside linebacker. So, but Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson are the two star players on this team. Army running back Kanye Udo takes over for Cam Scatibo at running back. And Kanye Udo, he was second team All-American Conference. He had 1,117 yards. He ran for 1,100 yards, Kanye Udo, at Army. He ran for 1,100 yards. He's a big reason why Army was one of the last undefeated teams in college football. And he comes in to fill the void that Cam Scatibo left. Shimon Metayer is the tight end. He is a senior tight end. He was second team Big 12 last year, 5 receiving touchdowns as a junior. So, yeah, I mean, Arizona State's going to have an explosive offense, good variety of playmakers. And the two guys to watch for on that defense are Keshawn Elliott, who is a pure linebacker. He can play any linebacker role in a 43 or a 34, very versatile. And Xavier Alford, the strong safety, is probably the star on Arizona State's defense. So, I mean, looking at Arizona State's schedule, they get Baylor on the road, they get Utah on the road, they get Texas Tech at home. I think they'll probably beat Texas Tech at home this year, but I don't know if they'll I think they would lose to them in a rematch, though, on a neutral site. And that's the thing. Texas Tech's defense is really good. Even without David Bailey, they were giving Levitt and Tyson fits last year. And if it wasn't for Cam Scatibo, they would have lost that game by double digits. Cam Scatibo is the only reason they lost to Texas Tech by single digits last year, William. And I would argue Arizona State's offense might be worse without Scatibo, and Texas Tech's defense might be better with the addition of David Bailey. So, but the good news for Arizona State is they have home field this time around.
Yeah.
Play Texas Tech.
That's going to be a great game.
I agree. And even if Arizona State lost that game, their strength of schedule, well, they get Iowa State and Baylor on the road. So if they lost both of those games and Utah. So, yeah, Arizona State could run the table, but they could also be 8-4, just like Kansas State. They're kind of in the same boat. And Texas Tech's in that boat too. Like Arizona State, Kansas State, they all have very tough strength of schedules. Let's look at Iowa State. We already talked about Iowa State under the bleachers. Rocco Becht at quarterback, Carson Hansen at running back, Dylan Barrett and Tyler Miller on the offensive line, Dominique Orange at defensive tackle, Jontez Williams at corner, Jeremiah Cooper at free safety. But, you know, they've got Abu Sama III as the backup running back to Carson Hansen. But outside of Kansas State and Iowa, their schedule is very manageable. I mean, they get Arizona at home, Cincinnati on the road, Colorado on the road, BYU at home, Arizona State at home, TCU on the road, Kansas at home, and Oklahoma State on the road. I would argue Iowa State is the easiest strength of schedule of the teams we've mentioned so far that are contenders. So, do I think Iowa State's the most talented team in this conference? I would say that Texas Tech and Arizona State are probably the two most talented teams on paper, but I would put Iowa State at third in terms of overall talent. And I would also go as far as to say that Iowa State really does benefit from an easy strength of schedule this year, William. I mean, outside of the Kansas State game and the Arizona State game, every game on their and Iowa, every game on their schedule is winnable, but Iowa's a non-conference opponent. So even if Iowa State lost that game, they would only have 2 conference losses if they lost to Kansas State and to Arizona State at home. So Iowa State is a huge beneficiary this year in terms of strength of schedule. If they can beat Arizona State and Kansas State, Iowa State might be undefeated heading into the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, that would be. I can definitely see it, man. You know, they're an experienced team with an experienced quarterback. You know,
They get
what we're
Iowa
on
at
for this
home,
position.
Kansas State and Dublin, and Arizona State at home. And I would argue those are the 3 toughest opponents on their schedule. They don't play Baylor,
Sure.
they don't play Utah, they don't play Texas Tech. So Iowa State is a huge beneficiary, I think, in terms of strength of schedule.
For sure.
Because it feels like Kansas State, Arizona State, Texas Tech, they all got the short end of the scheduling stick.
Let's see, where was I?
All right, Utah and Baylor are the final 2 teams. Devin Dampier, the starting quarterback at New Mexico, is expected to beat out Isaac Wilson for the starting quarterback job. Devin Dampier comes from New Mexico to Utah in the portal. Utah's offensive tackle tandem of Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fanu is one of the best. Fanu is one of the best in the nation. Logan Fanu is a player I have a first-round grade on in the 2027 draft, and I've got a first-round grade on Fanu in 2026. Lomu's a guy who could be a day 2 pick in 2026 as well. And Lander Barton, the middle linebacker, I have an 87 for potential on Lander Barton. And that might be too low because I feel like we had Barton at like an 89 or a 93 last year, but I forget where we had Barton. But we both liked Barton. That's all I do remember on Lander Barton. But yeah, Logan, the Fanu brothers, Spencer Fanu, Logan Fanu, Caleb Lomu, who Daniel Kelly did a preview on at first round mock, and then Lander Barton. Utah's got, what do we got here in the chat room?
Just some.
Just tired of streaming, blah, blah, blah. Not an intelligent football con. Damn it. But yeah, Utah does get Texas Tech and Arizona State at home this year. In fact, West Virginia, BYU, Baylor, and Kansas are that 3 games. Baylor and Kansas on the road are going to be losses for UCLA, and they are probably going to lose one of these 3 home games. They're probably going to lose one of their 3 home games against Arizona State, Texas Tech, or Kansas State. And I think you could argue they might lose to Colorado. They might lose a road game like BYU in a trap game. So I would say Utah's probably 9-3 or 8-4 just based on strength of schedule. But that's the thing. A lot of these teams, William, they look like a lot of these teams.
Utah had so much success, you know, a couple of years ago. Ended up, you know, beating Caleb Williams like none other, and you know, having Cam Rising out there, you know, before the injuries pretty much ended his career, you know, and that's what they need to get back to. Kyle Whittingham is an excellent coach. He's a defensive coach. There's defensive players that come out of here all day long. You know, he also knows tight ends. You know, I mean, between Dalton Kincaid and what's his name?
Dallin Bentley's
a
senior. He takes over for Dallin Bentley's a senior tight end for Utah.
Yeah, and you know, Whittingham, he loves experienced players.
Yep,
that's one thing, and I just want to see him get back to that because they ran the Pac-12. You know, I mean,
in the second to last year when Caleb Williams won the Heisman, they ran the Pac-12 that year. And a lot of USC fans say if Caleb hadn't got injured that game, USC would have won the Pac-12. I don't know about that. Utah's defense was just in the zone that day. And Utah
dude.
had a lot of guys in the 2022 NFL draft as well as 2023 on that defense.
Watching Cam Rising out there, you know, taking that hit, you know, in the Rose Bowl and jumping up and just, I mean, literally getting his helmet knocked off and everything that was going on. It's like, no, it doesn't matter. if Caleb Williams got injured. He just wasn't better than this defense or Cam Rising at the time, And I mean, for whatever he was on people blame, the offensive line. They blame this, they blame that. I blame Caleb Williams, hero football, going out there trying to make things look good. And it's like, but I mean, like I said, they just need to get back to where they were and, find some more players, get in that recruiting, find the heart, find the toughness that Kyle Whittingham has. Those kind of players are what can run this team. They were expected to win the Big 12 last year, before the whole season started and everything else. And like I said, man.
Yep, and the final Big 12 team before William and I make our Big 12 title game predictions is Baylor. Baylor, I've got 4 players on this Baylor team, 3 on offense. Sawyer Robertson is a quarterback. I have an 88 for potential on him. Same potential grade I gave Bo Nix coming out of Oregon, but Sawyer Robertson, 3,071 yards. I mean, Sawyer Robertson was a Mississippi State quarterback who transferred to Baylor. They also have Bryson Washington at running back. Bryson Washington is a sophomore redshirt, 1,028 rushing yards as a freshman redshirt. He is draft eligible because he's a sophomore redshirt. Josh Cameron is a wide receiver. I do not expect Bryson to turn pro, but he could if he wanted to. And Josh Cameron, I have an 89 on the Baylor wide receiver. Josh Cameron had 754 yards and 10 receiving touchdowns last season, 14 Big 12. And Keaton Thomas, their linebacker, he can play left outside and middle linebacker and 34 middle linebacker. So that's what Baylor has. And Baylor's going to be 0-2. They get Auburn at home to start the year, and then they play SMU on the road. They are probably going to lose both of those games. And their first Big 12 game is a home game against Arizona State. And that's going to be the game that sets the tone for their season, because if they lose to Arizona State, you're probably looking at Baylor being 1-3. And if Baylor beats Arizona State, they could probably run the table, because look at their schedule, William, versus Arizona State, at Oklahoma State, versus Kansas State, bye week, at TCU, at Cincinnati, versus Central Florida, bye week, versus Utah, at Arizona, versus Houston. They don't face any teams on the road that they would be considered a threat to lose. They get Arizona State and Kansas State at home. Those are probably their 2 hardest opponents, and they get both those teams early in the season. Utah is probably their other tough opponent, and they get them at home. So Baylor is one of these teams where, yeah, they could start 0-2, but if they take care of business against Arizona State, they could just go on a rampage, and that rampage could lead to a Big 12 title. On the flip side, if they lose to Arizona State in the conference opener, you're 1-3, you're 0-1 in conference play, and you have to climb out of a hole just to make a bowl game. So that's what's going on with Baylor, Williams. So you want to talk about that schedule briefly before we pick our teams for the Big 12 championship?
Well, I definitely agree with you. Baylor hasn't been relevant for a minute. That's it. It's been a trendy pick for whatever you want to say. I mean, I just read on here that most overrated team is Texas Tech in the Big 12, and most underrated is Baylor, and that's something on CBS. And I threw up in my mouth.
12 over Utah, because Baylor has 10 returning starters on offense and 8 on defense. So
yeah, and that experience really matters in the college rankings. So
yeah,
that. I wouldn't call them exactly underrated, besides the point that, they haven't been relevant since what?
They're probably going to start 0-2. I don't see them beating Auburn or SMU. But if they beat Arizona State, they can rally and be a very dangerous team with a chip on their shoulder. And if they lose to Arizona State, they're 1-3, and they're just trying to climb out of that hole to get into a bowl game.
Yeah, I actually picture them trying to climb out of that hole because,
I agree.
yeah, and I don't know how that's going to go because I mean, just looking at what's happening, but that experience counts for something. So
That's
we'll just
true. Common sense would say to pick Iowa State over Utah. If we're
mhm.
just looking at strength of schedules alone, common sense says to pick that. I'm not going to do what common sense says. My Big 12 title prediction is Texas Tech over Arizona State. Again, I have Arizona State winning the regular season game, but I have Texas Tech getting the Big 12 title game and getting their revenge in the Big 12 championship. And I could be wrong on that. Texas Tech's a team that's all over the place right now. So,
Yeah, but that's one of the things is I absolutely agree that Texas Tech is going to win this, and that's because of what I saw watching on film, not just from Baron Morton, but what they were doing
because
and
that defense
how they
was
were coached.
frustrating Arizona State. When they
Yeah,
played Arizona State last year, that defense frustrated the crap out of them.
yeah,
And if they can get back to the Big 12 championship, I believe they'll win because I believe they have the best defense in that entire conference. And the
very
offense is
much.
pretty good too.
I think the most underrated is Utah because not a lot of people see what's going on there, and they've kind of always been that way. But as it stands, without Utah absolutely showing out and doing something, which they can because their coaching is superior to anybody in this league or conference, and I would put Texas Tech, but I'm going to go with over SMU. I like what I've seen there. Anyway,
SMU's
and
in the ACC. What are you thinking for the Big 12?
oh, my brain is off. I was looking at it's early in the morning, man. 7 a.m.
No worries.
Iowa State and Rocco Beck. Yeah, that's exactly. I
So do you have Texas Tech, Iowa State, or do you have another team playing Iowa State for the Big 12 championship?
no, I've got Texas Tech over Iowa State.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I'm going Texas Tech over Arizona State, but Iowa State is my number 3 team.
Mm.
I think I have, because I'm double checking something. I might go Texas Tech over Iowa State too. I'm checking. I've got 6 players on Arizona State. I've
Mm-hmm.
got 7 on Iowa State. Iowa State's hosting. Okay, so Iowa State's hosting that game, and that is a revenge game for them. But I'll go Texas Tech over Arizona State because I think it's more fun when we have a slight disagreement on the teams. But I do think Iowa State's the de facto number 3 team behind Iowa State, and they could end up being number 2 if they beat Arizona State at home this year. But I think
Yeah,
Arizona State just gave them a slacking in the Big 12 title game last year.
yeah,
And on that
and
note, it's 9:54. We're going to jump into some NFL season previews, folks. I did not think we would be getting done with this.
woohoo!
Over under. Are you guys going to get to the Jaguars preview before Joey calls in? Right now, at the rate we're going, we might actually get to because I think the Colts and the Titans are probably going to be the shortest previews in the history of this. I don't even think I need to pull up the Titans depth chart. I really don't think I need to pull up their depth chart. I will. I'll show them a little love. I'll show them a little respect, but I honestly don't believe I need to pull up their depth chart. I mean, we know what the Titans are capable of, but all right, I'll pull up the damn depth chart. I'll give the Titans a little bit of shine. I don't expect much from the Titans. I like the fact that Cam Ward. I do. I like the fact that Cam Ward's getting up at 5 a.m. every day.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
He is a
I
talented
like
guy.
that.
That's actually
I can
how
respect the
Cam
grind, the
Newton
work
started
ethic.
out. Mm-hmm. That work ethic is everything when it comes to players like him, and he can absolutely do some excellent things. He's going to be good for Tennessee. There is obviously, they've got some players down there. You know, they hooked him up with Xavier Restrepo, and you know, that kid, even though whatever they're talking about his 4.840 or something like that, it's like, just watch the film, man. It's like that's not how he plays. Even if that was real, you know, there were whispers about the hamstring, everything else. But this is a team that needs to figure out their wide receiver core too. You know, they've got Calvin Ridley down there, and they need to absolutely stack Cam Ward with weapons. And
I agree. I don't know why the screen share isn't working. Okay, now it's working. All right, good. But yeah, the Titans, the depth chart, we've got Cam Ward at quarterback. Van Jefferson, Calvin Ridley, and Tyler Lockett are the starting receivers. The 2 fourth-round receivers they drafted, Ao Manor and Shamir Dyke, are on second string. Restrepo's on third string. I'm calling shenanigans on that, William. I do not believe Bryce Oliver, drafted receiver in 2024, is better than Restrepo, so I am declaring shenanigans on that right now.
Very much.
I'm declaring shenanigans.
I'm declaring. I like that. Declaring shenanigans.
Declaring shenanigans on that. I don't declare shenanigans on a lot. I'm declaring shenanigans on that. Restrepo is better than Bryce Oliver. I can guarantee you Bryce Oliver is a roster cut. I can pretty much guarantee you that's one of the Titans' roster cuts.
Oh. And like you mentioned, the other 2 rookies
on the final roster.
Yeah, I don't believe
Dan Moore Jr. was an awful signing. I thought he was the worst starting left tackle in the entire AFC, and the Titans paid him $100 million for 5 years, $20 million a year, and they can't get out of that contract till 2028. So Cam Ward is going to have a horrible left tackle for the first 3 years of his rookie deal.
That is not good, man. I wasn't
really
even paying attention to that. I hadn't heard that yet, and that's maybe they should have been worrying about that a little bit more than, you know, getting 3 receivers. Not that they didn't need the receivers, but
Dan Moore Jr. is undrafted free agent John Ojukwu. Udo's been demoted to third string. And Jalen Duncan has experience at both left tackle and right tackle, so I would think Latham would move over to left tackle and Duncan would play right tackle. And Latham made the transition from right tackle at Alabama to left tackle at the Titans last year. He did not do well as left tackle. I think Latham will see more success at right tackle, but Dan Moore Jr., I'm not confident in Cam Ward with Dan Moore Jr. I mean, even if Cam Ward elevates these receivers, I just feel like there's only so much the Titans can do.
Yeah.
Tony Pollard, Spears.
How do you feel about
Will Mullins, the fullback?
How do you feel about Peter Skoronski?
I like Gunnar Helm. Skoronski's good. Skoronski, Zeitler, and Cushenberry. The interior offensive line is very good for the Titans.
I remember Skoronski
starters on the interior are good.
Skoronski had alligator arms or something, didn't he? Something along those lines.
Yeah, he had very tiny arms. That's why he had to move inside the left guard.
Yeah. You mentioned Gunnar Helm, but you know what I saw with Gunnar Helm is he can be a solid tight end, but he's not going to be an absolute star. You know, I mean, he runs slow.
I agree. I think he's a high-end starter, but he's not a Pro Bowl caliber tight end like some think.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
He's definitely not.
And I think his upside's higher than Okonkwo's, but they're not going to throw him into the fire, and I don't think they're going to trade Okonkwo unless they get a really good offer.
Yeah.
They'll probably let him walk after this year, but I don't think they're going to trade him at this juncture.
Okonkwo is definitely a talented guy. He just needs to show some consistency and get out there and do some things, you know, like he was expected to do the last few years. But Gunnar Helm was interesting for him to be, you know, picked in that position. But like I said, because he's a slow guy, he ran like a 4.840 as well. He's Restrepo's obviously faster, but he has a large catch radius. But as a receiver, he was having trouble, you know, getting any separation from anyone or being invisible enough to sneak underneath the zone and things like that. like I said, I just view him as a plain tight end. He can play, but just not star
Yeah, and the
quality.
Titans run a 34. I love Draymond Jones as a 5 technique. As a 34 defensive end, I absolutely love Draymond Jones. The idea of Draymond Jones playing edge rusher at outside linebacker does make me cringe a little. And him and Arden Key are your edge rushers. You drafted an edge rusher in round 2. He's a backup. Amani Hooker and Xavier Woods are the starters. So Cam Ward was the only day 1 starter the Titans got, which really, that is not good because you're putting all that pressure on Ward, and his supporting cast is not going to be great his rookie year.
Yeah, for sure.
So
This
I like Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons on the interior. Sebastian Joseph Day is a good complementary player. So I think the defensive line for the Titans is strong. James Williams Sr.'s beating out Cedric Gray for an inside linebacker job. Cody Barton, if he's healthy, he could be solid, but I don't really see him being spectacular. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and Algerius Sneed and Roger McCreary, very good cornerback tandem. I think the secondary and the defensive line are the strengths of this defense, whereas the linebacker play at edge rusher and inside linebacker is the weakness. So that would be my big takeaway. And after quarterback, many would argue that edge rusher and left tackle are the 2 most important positions on your football team. And those are positions where the Titans are going to have massive liabilities this year.
Yep. And that's one thing,
So it's going to be a long year for the Titans.
Building from the inside out, you got to protect that quarterback, and you got to hit that quarterback, I mean.
Yep. I'll pull up the Titans schedule, and then I'll pull up the Colts depth chart. So I'm going to try to go as quickly as possible here. I'm not going to rush, but I kind of have an idea of what I want to do with these teams. And the Titans, I have the Titans at 3-14. I am sticking with my 8-9 prediction for the Colts, but I do not feel very confident in it now that Daniel Jones was the starter, because I have the Colts at 8-9 if Anthony Richardson started every game. Now that Daniel Jones is starting, I have mixed feelings, but I do think the Titans beat the Colts in week 3 if Daniel Jones is starting. They should beat Seattle at home, and I have them beating New Orleans at home, but they go 3-14 on the year.
Yeah.
And Cam Ward goes through a lot of growing pains, so there's that.
Very much.
Really not much else to say about the Titans. We'll get to the Colts next. And we've already talked about the Colts. We've talked about the Colts multiple times. You've posted some Under the Bleachers content for the Colts after Jones won the starting job. The notes I talked about from Colts camp. So, I mean, Daniel Jones
it's
starting.
And I think the kid can absolutely play. He spent so much time in with the Giants, but Joe Schoen just didn't give him much there. And besides,
I was wondering what the hell the Colts were going to do at right guard, because I felt like right guard was going to be a weakness for them. But they're going to play Matt Goncalves, last year's 3rd round pick out of Pitt, who was a tackle. They're going to move him inside to right guard. And the offensive line's pretty good. I do like Jonathan Taylor. Our Lads has Tyler Goodson listed as the backup. Tyler Goodson did not even get any reps at Colts camp. It was Giddens and Khalil Herbert and Taylor. Those were the 3 guys who got reps. So
everything I've been seeing has Giddens.
Camp, I can tell you Goodson's probably going to get cut. And
Giddens has absolutely showed that he should be the backup there, and Jonathan Taylor's ankle isn't going to get any tighter after a couple high ankle sprains. And that's one thing and Giddens just went in this fantasy draft like right before I picked, like this morning, and I likely would have taken him because I love the rest of what the Colts are doing on offense. The players that they have,
I love the skill position players
Alex
at wide
Pierce.
receiver. Pierce, Pittman, Downs, Adonai Mitchell, and Gold were both taking first. Gold, Doolin, Mitchell, and Gold were all taking first-team reps when Pittman was injured at the practice I went to. The only receiver that dropped a pass from a quarterback that was thrown accurately was Laquan Treadwell. I don't think he's going to make the final roster.
No, like I said, Josh Downs he's an absolute animal. The kid has a step on everyone. He's going to show out this year with Daniel
I
Jones.
agree.
Anthony Richardson didn't know what to do
And
with
tight
him.
end depth is incredible too. Mo Alley Cox was a decent number one starter. He'll be a better backup. Drew Ogletree's the third string tight end, but I'm curious to see if Will Mallory or Jelani Woods makes the team as a fourth string tight end. Do they go with 4 tight ends? Do they go? They're not going to go with 5, but are they going to go with 4 tight ends or are they going to go with 3? That's what I'm kind of curious to see.
Will Mallory is a very capable tight end that can be an NFL starter.
Yeah, Woodson was the starter as a rookie, but he has had injuries which have kept him from playing. And
yeah,
I think he's in a tough spot here with Mallory for the tight end 4 job.
Yeah, I think Mallory's going to take it over him. That's just what I've seen. Mallory at Miami was a good player, a very good player, and but he's still learning. It's 3 to 4 years before you really see whether a tight end has learned enough to actually be a starter, or if he's just going to tank because maybe he's not smart enough, maybe he's not fast enough, maybe something. Tight end is one of the toughest positions.
Danny Pinter is center and Jalen Travis is the left tackle. That's basically the Colts offense, and I had a lot of notes in the Colts offense. I do think Tyler Ward has a good floor, but I think
Tyler Warren.
Loveland's ceiling's higher. We'll get to the Colts defense shortly.
Yeah, Tyler Warren is an absolute. He's got great IQ. Watching him play, watching him line up at quarterback, watching him line up at everywhere. This kid is so damn smart, and everybody generally had him as tight end 1 last year. I had him as tight end 2 behind Loveland. And
yeah, so did I. I had Loveland as tight
end. It was like 1A and 1B. Those 2 players.
I had a higher floor on Warren, but I had a higher ceiling on Loveland. So that's why I can see why it's a 1A, 1B situation. But I'm going to get to the Colts defense now. Latu looked good at Colts practice. So did Buckner. Kwity Paye was offsides on a play, but it sounds like if the Colts play Latu and Paye, I do think their defense can win them games. But last year they got too cute. They either went with Paye and Ekibom or Paye and Lewis or Paye and the Vanderbilt edge rusher, Deo Odiingbo. And they can't do that. They got to play Paye and Latu. They got to put faith in their 2 first-round edge rushers. If they can do that, I do think this defense can steal some games. Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner. You brought in Neville Gallimore. You have Adwa Bore. I do like the depth on this defensive line. Jalen Carley's is your right outside linebacker. Zaire Franklin's your middle linebacker. Ward is the number 1 corner. The Colts did bring in Xavier Howard from the Miami Dolphins. And if he's starting, because I think Xavier Howard's good enough to start next to Ward. But I don't know if they're going to start Jalen Jones, Juju Brents, or Howard at that number 2 corner spot. I would start Howard because the Colts play Miami in week 1. And if you put Howard against his former team, he's going to come into that game all fired up.
For sure. I love seeing those.
So I would start Howard. I don't know why he's on 3rd string, but
that's kind of interesting.
They're making him earn everything. I get it. Bynum and Cross, good tight end set. Rodney Thomas and Scott, both good backups. Spencer Schrader, the former Chiefs backup kicker, is now the Colts starter, and Rickberto Sanchez is the punter. I did give the Colts an 8-9 record. I will go back to sharing this tab. Can see my Titans projections one more time, and then I had the Colts at 8-9. This was with Richardson starting all 17 games. I'm not going to change my 8-9 record. I have the Colts going winless on the road and 8-1 at home. This probably will not happen. This is a prediction I'm pretty much guaranteeing I will probably be wrong on. I'm pretty much saying I'm going to be wrong on the Colts going 8-9. I'm too stubborn to change my projections, but I'm pretty much coming off the record saying this is a prediction I'm 90% certain I'm going to be wrong on. That should say something.
Yeah. Well, there's so much about this team that needs to be decided. And I mean, they have that potential, but I just looking at the defense, a bunch of guys I never heard of. Well, a few of them, but
I
on
mean,
offense,
Laku
like I
and Pay are
said,
good. They've got Buckner from the Niners and Ward from the
oh yeah,
Niners. Zaire
yeah,
Franklin's a beast at middle linebacker. Carly's has
yeah,
to show out this year. He was a safety in college. That he's got to show out at right outside linebacker. And
yeah.
Bynum was cool enough to follow me on Twitter. They've got Nick Cross. I just don't know their number 2 corner is going to be, and they've got Kenny Moore at nickel. So I do like their defense, but can it do enough? I think the defense is good enough to be a top 15 defense, but the problem is they're going to have to be a top 10 defense if they're going to win 8 games with the quarterback situation they have, William. That's the thing. And
Like
they
I
don't have
said,
to be like a top 5 defense. They just have to be a top 10 defense, and they should be able to win 8 games, even with the QB play.
I see Anthony Richardson as a quarterback, that got along because of his athletic ability. I don't see so much. I don't see the football IQ. I don't see him, making the correct reads. I see him looking for the open receiver, not really knowing where. And that might work in college, but I don't see it working at all in the NFL. Daniel Jones has the experience. He actually got that contract. He played really well. And Josh Downs, Richardson wasn't able to do anything with him. I think Richardson is just a flat busted quarterback, and this year is going to absolutely, decide that. Daniel Jones is on that 1-year contract, but what are they doing after that? Because Anthony Richardson, I don't believe is going to be there in 2 or 3 years. He's going to be out of the league for sure, and it's a situation that I'm not a hater. I don't hate anyone, but what it takes to win in the NFL is what I talk about. That's my job right there. What it takes to win in the NFL. Picking these prospects, doing everything like that. And this team, the skill positions are absolutely beautiful. Pittman is a very capable receiver. Alec Pierce, he has a little bit of trouble gaining separation, but the contested catches he does really well with. And now, like I said, Tyler Warren's there. They're tied in. They had a what's his name, Mo Alley Cox or whatever, and he's capable. But Tyler Warren puts that
better as a backup, and I
think
think the Colts are going to be a fun team to watch. But the QB situation
yes,
probably keep them from a playoff appearance this year. But the next team we're going to preview is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And sorry, Joey, we have to get to the Jaguars. I know you're the Jacksonville resident, but haven't heard from you yet, and got to jump into this. Trevor Lawrence is the QB. We've got ETN, Bigsby, Tootin. I've heard some things about Tootin in the preseason. I was not high on Tootin, so we'll see what happens. I like Allen. Quint might be back 7th-round pick out of Syracuse. Brian Thomas, Travis Hunter, the weapons. You have Diami Brown as your slot receiver. Brown got hot for the Commanders at the end of last year. That's why he got a second chance as a starter. He's never been anything spectacular. Jaguars probably do need a slot receiver in free agency next year or next year's draft. Walker Little, Ezra Cleveland, Hainsley. I like Jonah Monheim. Jonah Monheim was my number 1 center. I would start Monheim over Hainsley all day. But Hainsley's more experienced, I guess. Patrick McCarry's your right guard. Anton Harrison's your right tackle. But if Hainsley gets injured, I think Monheim's going to take the center job, and he's not going to give it back. I don't like any of the tight ends in Jacksonville. Brenton Strange, was my worst graded tight end out of every tight end in the 2023 draft. So I think the Jaguars, they have the worst tight end room in the entire league. So that's going to limit their ability to make things happen. Their running game was really inconsistent. I do think Trevor Lawrence can have success this season, but that's mainly due to the offensive line being healthy and the weapons at wide receiver with Hunter and Thomas. There's nothing else about this offense that excites me outside of the offensive line Hunter, and Thomas. There's nothing else that excites me, William.
No, the tight ends
Room.
are a mess. Britton Strange has been a trendy pick in fantasy football. No, he's not. He's not going to be very good. Hunter Long, I remember him coming out of
Johnny Munt,
Boston
good third
College.
string backup tight end of the Vikings, but nothing spectacular.
That's the same thing with Long. Nothing
Yeah.
spectacular.
And Morris
but
was a backup on the Bills at one point before they drafted Dalton Kincaid. So he's fourth string tight end. That should tell you how bad this tight end room is. Jaguars, they have Josh Hines Allen at right end, Trayvon Walker at left end. DeJuan Smoot and Agba are the backup edges. Armstead and Hamilton are the nose tackles, and Tyler Lacey, Mason Smith, second and fourth round picks in 24, 23 of the backups. Very good depth on the defensive line for Jacksonville. Colin Saunders, he was on the Saints and the Jets and the Chiefs. Now he's on the Jags, and Austin Johnson also competing for a third string job. I love Jacksonville's defensive tackle depth. That's why I said they weren't going to draft Mason Graham. And every Jaguars fan was like, we're getting Mason Graham at 5. No, you guys have so much depth, you don't need him. And Foyesade Olakun, Devin Lloyd, Dennis Gardeck. So Dennis Gardeck's going to be replacing and Chad Muma's listed as a third stringer. Jack Kaiser's jumped Chad Muma on the depth chart. A little surprised by that because I've always liked Chad Muma. I think Muma's good enough to start at middle linebacker if you need a guy.
Very much.
Ventrell Miller's. I get it. Ventrell Miller outplayed Muma last year, but I don't think Gardeck should be starting. That's another issue I have with this Jags defense. I would rather start Muma or Kaiser at that Sam linebacker role versus Gardeck. I think starting Gardeck will limit your defense significantly.
Muma is a good player. He's still learning, coming out of Wyoming.
Yeah, and final year of his rookie deal, though. We'll see what happens because Tyson Campbell's the number 1 corner. Instead of Travis Hunter being the number 2 corner, they have Jerry and Jones, third-round pick out of Florida State, listed as the number 2 corner. Jordan Lewis, and they have Hunter listed as the dime. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because if they play Hunter every down, maybe they're thinking he'll fatigue if he plays every down. And he did miss a tackle versus Caleb Johnson against the Steelers. Hunter did. So we'll see what the Jags do with Hunter at both positions.
Well, that's the one thing I can't see him taking so high. Like in fantasy football, everybody's got him, in the first round. And it's like, yes, he is a great receiver, but twice the plays, is going to be twice the wear, This is the NFL. It's not college anymore. I think he's going to find out it's going to be incredibly tough. They had,
I think he's a better corner than he's a receiver. You think he's a better receiver. The Jaguars are treating him like a first-team receiver but a second-team corner. I think they want to play him at both positions, but they want to play him situationally at corner, and they want to play him every down at wide receiver. That's at least the vibe I'm getting from this depth chart, even though he has been playing first team in the preseason. Eric Murray and Antonio Johnson are the strong safeties. Wingard, the backup free safety, takes over as the starting free safety. Darnell Savage is now the backup, and Jordan Lewis is now the nickel corner. So the Jags, I like the Jags defense. A lot of depth on the defensive side of the ball. And Monteric Brown was good in games situationally last year. So I think the Jags do have 4 good corners. Jerry and Jones is my question mark. I was not as high on Jerry and Jones as I was on Azaria Thomas in the 2024 draft. But Jerry and Jones did get drafted ahead of Thomas. So we'll see. We'll see what Jerry and Jones does. But I still think Hunter's going to end up starting next to Campbell. They're just using Jones as a placeholder because they don't want to wear out Hunter. That's my theory on that, William.
I definitely got you there. When they worked him out, they had him working a receiver. I absolutely loved him as a receiver.
Yep.
But that's just because of who he is. Most defensive players, I like the ones that are a little bit more aggressive, that are a little bit, he is absolutely athletic. He can absolutely play, but I don't see him, being a man eater at corner. But I see him as a pretty damn good receiver.
I've got the Jags at 9-8. I think they beat Carolina in week 1, but they probably lose to Cincy. I've got them losing to Houston 49ers. So I've got the Jags starting 1-3, but I've got them beating the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. I only have 3 teams beating the Chiefs. The Jags are the first team that I have beating the Chiefs. Seattle, the Rams. I have them losing the Raiders following a bye week, losing the Texans. They beat the Chargers at home, lose the Cardinals, beat the Titans on the road, beat the Colts at home, beat the Jets at home, lose the Colts on the road, lose the Broncos, beat the Titans. But if they beat the Colts at home and if Daniel Jones is starting week 17 over Richardson, I do think they could sweep the Colts. And if they do sweep the Colts, then we are looking at them potentially getting in over the Chargers as the last wild card. So just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what they're in position for, is probably that last wild card. I don't see them much better than that. This AFC South is just that way.
Yeah, the AFC South is just that weak this year. All right, Texans are up next. The Texans are up next. Nico Collins, Jaden Higgins, Christian Kirk are your wide receivers. Brad Noble told me Ursery's probably going to start over Cam Robinson at left tackle. That turned out to be true, so I appreciate the leak, Brad. Laken Tomlinson's the left guard. Jake Andrews is the center. Jake Andrews, former Patriot center out of Troy. That's interesting because Ed Ingram's another guy who could be starting. Scruggs and Patterson did not play horrible enough to lose their jobs, but they didn't play well enough to dominate either. Titus Howard's the right tackle. Blake Fisher's the backup right tackle. I think the Texans have a lot more depth on this offensive line versus last year. But at the same token, there's a lot of uncertainty as well, even though they have more depth. And Tank Dell's listed as a second team wide receiver. He's listed as a backup, but I think he's going to be on IR to start the season, still recovering from his injury. But Hutchinson, Jalen Noel, Justin Watson from the Chiefs, Braxton Berrios, they brought in a lot of guys for Stroud. Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb are going to make a very good 1-2 punch. And Dameon Pierce is your third string running back. Cade Stover's your backup tight end. So I love the receiver depth, love the offensive line depth. Tight end depth looks good. Running back depth looks good. Texans are one of the most complete offenses in the NFL. But in order for this offense to go anywhere, Stroud must stay healthy, which he's done the last 2 years. So, and as long as that continues to be the case, Texans will be the team to beat this division. Hunter and Will Anderson they're both very good edge rushers. Sheldon Rankins is a automatic upgrade over everyone they have at defensive tackle. They also add Tim Settle from the Bills, Mario Edwards, Fadu Kaki from the Jag. A lot of depth on the defensive tackle spot. Henry To'ato and Christian Harris are the weak side linebackers, both teammates from Alabama. EJ Speed, the Colts right outside linebackers, the backup to Azeez Al-Shahir. I think Al-Shahir is the one guy who could be upgraded on the Texans defense, but Stingley, Jalen Petir, Kamari Lassiter, Kalen Bullock, CJ Gardner-Johnson replaces Jimmy Ward as that strong safety, and now Ward's basically a free safety for depth. You still have MJ Stewart. The safety depth looks good. I think the secondary depth, the cornerback depth, on the other hand, behind Lassiter, Petir, and Stingley does not look great. Jalen Smith of USC is not a guy I was high on. Miles Bryant, former Patriot, is the other corner. D'Angelo Ross. Those are not guys I'm particularly high on. I think Arthur Mallett, former Raven, and Damone Arnett might be your best corners as far as the backups go. But yeah, if Stingley, Lassiter, Petir gets injured, the Texans are in trouble. The same with Stroud goes down. But they do have the depth to make up for injuries on the front seven. And it's safety. But if they lose any of their corners or Stroud, they're in trouble.
Yeah, agreed.
But as long as the corners and Stroud stay healthy, this is still the team to beat in the AFC South.
They need to figure out their backup spot behind Stroud.
They've got Davis Mills. I do not have any confidence in him. And I've got the Rams beating the Texans,
whatsoever.
but the Texans should win 3 in a row after that. They lose the Ravens, they lose the Seahawks, they're 3-3 following the week 6 bye, and then they string together 4 consecutive wins. They do get the Bills on Thursday Night Football. I think if anybody does beat the Bills in the regular season, it's probably the Texans. I do have the Bills at 17-0, but the Texans probably the best chance of any team to beat the Bills in front of their home crowd. They did it last year. I got them sweeping the Colts. I've got the Texans losing to the Chiefs. I've got the Texans winning 4 in a row to end the year, beating my Patriots in the wild card, and then losing to the Ravens in the divisional round. So
yeah, if they get the Ravens, that's definitely going to be a loss. I don't see this team matching up very well.
That's the AFC South division. Next up is the NFC South division, and we're going to start with a team that hasn't named their quarterback. That team, William, is the New Orleans Saints. They have not named a starting quarterback yet. Yeah, and Joey and I are guilty of roasting this team. We are guilty.
Very much, but what Tyler Shugg is just not. He, like I said, I've said before, he intrigued me at times, but he wasn't a second round quarterback, and he doesn't. But whatever Kellen Moore has going down there,
it's down to Rattler and Show. Hayner is pretty much out of the starting competition. They have not named a starter, but it's down to those two.
He got that far behind, and that's why, and under the bleachers, the group, I had the picture back there, free Jake Hayner. But it's like, excuse me, Spencer Rattler is a very much better quarterback than Tyler Shugg, and it's just.
And Rattler's been taking more first-team reps, but Show's getting some first-team reps too. So I think the plan is they're probably going to start Rattler, but they're going to give him a very short leash. And I like the Saints running back with Kamara. I love their offensive line, but I don't trust any receivers outside of Olave. And Brandon Cooks is listed as a number 4 receiver. Shaheed and Vele are the starters. The receiver depth isn't great. I think outside of Olave, they do need to get other receivers in the draft outside of Olave and start those guys, because I don't think they're great at attracting free agents. But I think as long as their offensive line's healthy, they're going to be okay.
Brandon Cooks, wasn't a spectacular receiver, but he stacked up some 1,000-yard seasons. And, on however many different teams he was on, I'm not sure, but I don't know. I can't see him as behind, stuck in 4th on the depth chart. That doesn't make any sense to me, man.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with a young quarterback that needs proven, weapons to succeed. And that's Tyler Shugg.
I think Shaheed, Vele, and Cooks and Wilson are basically all competing for the number 2 receiver job, even if the depth chart. Yeah. Even if the depth chart is Cooks' second team, we'll see what happens there.
I think Kellen Moore is absolutely screwing up this team. You mentioned before.
I agree. This offense was much better under Clint Kubiak a year ago. And what ends up happening is first day of training camp, Kellen Moore, he gives each of the quarterbacks a rep. So first down was Tyler Show. Second down was Rattler. Third down was Jake Hayner.
I don't know in what world that works in.
Quarterback room like a baseball rotation. That's not how you build a football team.
Yeah, no. And I have no faith in that. The Saints are a team. They have some players. They have some experience.
The Saints are traditionally a 43 defense, but our lads is the Saints running a 34. So if they change that up, they're going to be even worse because they're going to be playing a lot of guys out of position. So,
well, it says base 4-3, but it doesn't have base 4-3.
See, because it's right out. See, there's 4 linebackers.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Nose tackle.
So that's a 34 defense.
Yes, sir.
So that's what's confusing the crap out of me. So
This team is confusing the crap out of me.
yeah, and this is just the Kellen Moore effect.
It all depends on the culture that you bring in and how you handle it. The quarterback situation has been fumbled. I'm declaring shenanigans.
Yeah,
Or
Doug
I'm
Nussmeier.
declaring
Here's the
cringe.
thing, though. The Saints' offensive coordinator under Kellen Moore is Doug Nussmeier. I do have Garrett Nussmeier going to the Giants in my mock draft. I have the Saints picking second, but Nussmeier stays on as offensive coordinator. We could see Garrett Nussmeier in New Orleans with his dad. Just building a narrative. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying. And the defensive coordinator is Brandon Staley. Staley's a 34 guy. That's why we see the 34 depth chart.
There we
Brandon
go.
Staley, he ran the 34 as the Rams defensive coordinator. He ran the 34 with the Chargers. And now he's going to take a defense that's a natural. It's been a 43. The Saints have ran the 43 dating back to Mike Ditka, Jim Haslett days. So you're taking that defense and you're fucking it up. So
very much. That's another one of those things. I mean, the nickel is the most ran base, so that'd be 3-3-5. With the 3-4.
They are going to run a combination of 34 and 3-3-5, but they might run some 43. They might do some hybrid defense too.
Yeah,
but
that's actually probably what I'm guessing, and that's what you need to do when you're transitioning to make sure that you have the right players. You have to have that nose tackle, and the 1 technique, 3 technique, 5 technique, just down the line. And
I have the Saints going 3-14. I think there's 3 winnable games in their schedule. Week 5 versus the New York Giants at home. Week 12 versus the Falcons. The Saints and Falcons just hate each other. The Saints might do enough to beat the Falcons just because that's their biggest division rival. You got Saints fans calling Atlanta Falcons fans chickens, okay? The 2 fan bases hate each other.
I'm sure they call them worse than that.
Falcons fans probably call them worse than the Saints, and some Saints fans call Falcons fans chickens, and the Saints host the Jets in Week 16. So literally those are the only games on their entire schedule I see them winning. All right.
Yeah. But you mentioned that this is a division where the rivalries, run, and these teams are trying to build to beat each other. This is a very what do you call it? The first team to win the division twice in a row was the Saints a few years ago, I believe.
Yeah, and both the Buccaneers and Falcons have some injuries.
That's never good starting out, and that's what I've been watching with my team, and that decides a lot to do with the season.
Yep. Falcons lost Caleb McGarry to an injury earlier this week. And Penix.
That stings a little.
Jake Matthews has been the blind side for many years in Atlanta, but Penix throws with his left hand. He doesn't throw with his right hand like Cousins. He throws with his left hand. And I'm using the foot camp to demonstrate that because Jake Matthews, who's been the blind side for right-handed quarterbacks like Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, McGarry's now the blind side since Penix is a left-handed quarterback. And with McGarry getting injured. Well, if McGarry misses time, you have to eat. McGarry and Storm Norton are both injured, by the way, William. So that means 7th-round pick Jack Nelson, Wisconsin left tackle, will be thrown into the fire right away, whether he likes it or not. Because Storm Norton's going to miss the first 8 weeks of the season. Caleb McGarry's going to miss the first month. So that means, and Jack Nelson was a guy that I had starter potential on. But Falcons drafted him in round 7, and they are going to throw him into the fire. So that's the thing. Sir. The Falcons are going to throw Jack Nelson in the fire because Norton and McGarry are both injured. And if they don't want to throw Nelson in the fire, trade for somebody. I know it's going to cost you a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick to go out and get someone from another team, but at this point, that might be your only
They're out
play.
there. Yeah. And, there's guys that are going to be available that fit, that position. And that's one thing they should probably do. They need to protect Michael Penix like none other. He has an injury history, and
and right now, 2 of your offensive tackles are injured. Your swing tackle, Storm Norton, and your right tackle, McGarry. And McGarry's your blind side since Penix is left-handed, like I mentioned earlier. So right now, a 7th round rookie is the blind side to Penix. If you don't want to throw that guy into the fire, you need to trade for somebody.
Yeah, and Penix, with the mechanics that he throws with, is pretty much limited to one side of the field, with this whipping motion. And that's one thing you really have to watch. He's cleaned it up a bit, and I absolutely saw it. We mentioned Baron Morton earlier. They both had the same injury, and they both almost had that same throwing motion, that twisting, torquing,
Yeah, and the Falcons
throwing
need a center
motion
too. Ryan Newsell's the starting center, but he has no business at center. Gwynn is a right guard. So the Falcons are going to be depleted at center and right tackle. They're going to have good guard play and Jake Matthews at left tackle, but Jake Matthews is not going to be the blind side unless Cousins ends up starting over Penix at some point this season, which could happen. We'll see. Mooney,
very much
London,
the injury history
Mooney and London are good. Ray McLeod. I'm not high on Ray McLeod. I'm not high on Hodge. I'm not high on Agnew. I wish the Falcons would have done something else to upgrade its slot receiver, but we'll see what Ray McLeod does as the slot guy for Atlanta. Kyle Pitts, your tight end 1. I don't like Warner as the tight end 2. Quatoriano's tight end 3. Robinson and Algier are your running backs 1 and 2. I think all the guys in the running for the 3rd string running back job are terrible. I'll just come out and say that much. And the Falcons have been resting Penix and Cousins all preseason and playing Easton Stick. So, and Ben DiNucci, that's been their entire preseason plan, is let's play Easton Stick and Ben DiNucci. That's why the Falcons have been absolutely brutal to watch this preseason. Falcons, Arnold Ebiketie, David Onyemata, Rook or Horho are the starting defensive linemen. Both of the Falcons' first-round edge rushers. This says the Falcons are running a 43. Right end, D-tackle. The Falcons have ran a 34. Who's the defensive coordinator? Jeff Ulbrich. Wasn't Ulbrich the Jaguars' defensive coordinator last year? I'm going to look that up.
That absolutely sounds right. Don't quote me on that, but
I'm not quoting you. I'm looking it up. He was the Jets defensive coordinator and the Jets interim head coach. So the Jets ran the 43. So again, Atlanta taking a defensive scheme, the 34, and what works, and flipping it to a scheme that the defensive coordinator prefers to run. And this is the problem I have with teams. When you have a defensive scheme that the players are familiar with, that the coach is not familiar with, the coach basically just overrides the player's comfort level and does what he is comfortable with. And that can kill a franchise. That can keep a franchise from success. Because all these guys that don't know the 43, like Pierce knows the 43, Walker does not. And you drafted Walker ahead of Pierce. And both rookies are on second team still. Xavier Watts is on second team. He needs to be starting over DeMarco Hellams. Hellams was a 7th round pick. He has no business starting. He's not very good. Watts needs to be starting with Bates.
I don't know how Watts slipped. I mean, he absolutely had 1st round potential, coming out of Notre Dame. This is a kid
but he
that
didn't
is
run a
very,
good 40
very
time.
good.
That's why. He had 1st round tape, but he didn't run a good 40 time, so that's why he fell.
Yeah.
Billy Bowman's another guy I like.
Overrated,
I had a second on Bowman. He fell the 4th, but I think he's more of a safety than a nickel. But the Falcons are loaded at safety. I mean, they should be playing Watts over Hellams. That's really my only complaint. Mike Hughes is not a guy who should be a number 2 corner. Mike Hughes has Mike Hughes was awful as a nickel corner with the Chiefs, awful as a nickel corner with the Lions. He has no business being a number 2 corner. He's going to get torched against guys like he's going to be facing Xavier Legette and Emeka Egbuka with the Buccaneers injuries. He's going to get torched against those guys. Okay, I'm even more confident in my decision to start Egbuka against you in Dynasty, knowing that Mike Hughes is the Falcons' number 2 corner. Egbuka should feast, and yeah, we'll pull up the Falcons' schedule. I do have Atlanta at 7-10, but they could end up doing a lot worse than my projection with the McGarry and Storm Norton injuries. Atlanta could be winless. If Atlanta does not beat Tampa Bay or Washington, they could be winless heading into their bye week. And then they get the Bills at home. So they could be 0-5, 0-6. I do think they will beat Miami. But, with the injuries to McGarry and Storm Norton, they could lose the first 4 games of the year and then finish 5-12 instead of 7-10. That is one thing I've picked up on. They get the Falcons. They get the Colts in Germany. Colts-Falcons, that's a brutal Week 10 game in Germany. Versus Carolina, at New Orleans, at Jets. So I have the Falcons at 7-10, but they could be 5-12 with the injuries to Caleb McGarry early in the season. So. Yeah, and we'll get to the next 2 NFC South teams, and then we'll wrap this up. It's been very quick today. It's nice to have a show that goes by pretty quickly. If we finish before 11, I'll attempt to call Joey and give him open floor, but if he doesn't answer, I'm just going to end the show because we've covered everything we want to cover. And the Kansas State-Iowa State games at noon. And I'm glad that we are knocking out all these topics. If I had known it was going to be this quick, I probably would have started at 10 if I had known. But I'm glad we started at 9 because we want to be prepared for any scenario. Like if we start at 10 and Joey calls in at 10 and we get sidetracked, then we're not going to be able to get through all our topics before a game starts at noon. But today's gone very smoothly. Panthers, Bryce Young. Yeah, I want to share this tab. I've shared the Falcons tab. I screen shared the Falcons. But yeah, McMillan, Legette, Thielen. Thielen's on the trade block, by the way. Vikings did inquire about him, and they've got Jalen Coker. Coker, I think, can play the slot if Thielen gets moved. And Jimmy Horn Jr., a player Joey's talked about, has also had a very good preseason. Hunter Renfro's 3rd string. I mean, Panthers have a lot of depth at receiver. Ekwonu, Damian Lewis, Austin Corbett, Robert Hunt, Taylor Moton got a 2-year extension. Tommy Tremble's still the starting tight end. Jatavian Sanders and Mitchell Evans, both, I think, more deserving of starting at tight end than Tremble. Bryce Young's your quarterback 1, and Chuba Hubbard is your running back 1, with Rico Dowdle as a stopgap until the Texas running back comes back from IR. What is it, Jonathan Brooks? Yeah. Until Jonathan Brooks comes back, Dowdle's basically a stopgap while ETN's the 3rd string. So I like the Panthers' offense for the most part, but Bryce Young, he's got to take that next step. There are 0 excuses for him. Offensive line's back. You've got more tight end depth than ever, more receiver depth than ever. You don't have any more excuses. If Hubbard goes down, maybe you'll have a little bit of leeway, but even Dowdle's a nice stopgap for Brooks while he recovers from another ACL. And then the defense.
And Trevor Etienne is he's not bad. I was watching
He's
him
not
on film.
bad, but Hubbard's the bell cow and Dowdle. So, yeah,
obviously.
There's no more excuses for Bryce Young. You have all these weapons. Mm-hmm. You don't have to win the division, but you at least have to show signs of contending. Like if you go 8-9 and you tie the Buccaneers for the division, but you lose the division in the final week of the season, you'll get a 5th-year tender. You won't get a contract extension, but you'll show the team enough to earn that 5th-year tender. And I think at this point, that's a victory if you're Bryce Young. Wanham and Jones did not look good. Scorton and Umanian looked very good in the preseason game against the Browns. Derek Brown, Bobby Brown, Tershawn Wharton are the 34 defensive linemen. Shai Tuttle's your backup nose tackle. Ashawn Robinson, backup 34 defensive end. Roseboom from the Rams plays with Trevin Wallace. Michael Jackson from Seahawks is your number one corner. Chow Smith, Wade, your nickel. Michael Jackson would be your boundary. J.C. Horn's your number one corner. I know Horn's list is a right cornerback. Left cornerback's usually the number one corner. Horn's list is the right cornerback, but Horn's Carolina's number one corner. He got paid this offseason. Moring and Nick Scott are the safeties. Lathan Ransom is the backup safety. So, I mean, there's some nice pieces on Carolina's defense, but nothing that really excites me either. But there's some nice pieces.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Derek Brown and all that, but they ended up, getting rid of dude to Chicago and a few others. I think they needed a little bit more.
I think they cut Josie Jewell to save cap space, and they got rid of Shaq Thompson. So
yeah, Josie Jewell, he's a very capable player.
I like Trevin Wallace. He had a good rookie year, but I would not have gotten rid of both of those linebackers, both Jewell and Thompson. I would have only gotten rid of one and kept the other guy. But Panthers are doing Panther things in Carolina. They open up with Jacksonville. They get Arizona on the road in the Elf on the Shelf game. Guys, you need to schedule this game for Christmas and call it the Elf on the Shelf game. The ratings would be through the roof. Kyler Murray, Bryce Young, two smallest quarterbacks in the league, the Elf on the Shelf game. Has a lot more marketability versus a week 2 matchup in Arizona.
Very much. Maybe they should get some of those Build-A-Bear.
Build-A-Bear.
Put a little bit of hair on it to make it look like Bryce Young or Kyler Murray, make him a little bit taller.
That's a better marketing strategy than what the Colts did with Build-A-Bear.
Very much.
They host the Falcons. They should lose to New England, but they should beat Miami and Dallas at home. They probably lose the Jets. They're going to lose the Bills at home. They're going to lose to Green Bay. They beat the Saints. They lose to Atlanta. They lose to San Francisco. They actually win 4 in a row to end the year. They beat the Rams, bye week, beat the Saints, beat the Buccaneers at home, beat Seattle at home. But then they get Tampa in week 18 for the division, and they lose that game. And that's the game that I have deciding the NFC South division. So, and we'll get to the Buccaneers. The reason why I think the Panthers have a chance to pull away, the Panthers have to steal one of these games. And if they can just steal one of these games they're projected to lose, they could strip the division from the Buccaneers. It's that close. And the only reason it's that close, William, is because the Buccaneers have a ton of injuries. Jalen McMillan's out until week 8. Chris Godwin's out until week 5. Tristan Wirfs, their left tackle, is out until week 5. Those injuries cripple the Buccaneers.
Yeah, that's rough.
That is rough. Because the red is injured inactive. The red on our lads' color code, McMillan, Godwin, and Wirfs are all going to be inactive to start the year. And Tez Johnson, their 7th-round pick, is filling in for McMillan. So Tez Johnson apparently has moved ahead of Trey Palmer. So Tez Johnson, and I like Tez Johnson. I had a 2nd-round grade on Tez Johnson. So I have no issue with Tez Johnson playing next to Evans and Igbuka in the slot. If Tez Johnson is available in Dynasty, that might be a player to pick up, William. If Tez Johnson's still available in Dynasty, you want to pick him up.
Yeah. And I can agree with that. People are going to quota size and everything else, but this league has gotten so much lighter and faster over the last few years, and has been concentrating on hits, and player safety and everything like that. But Tez Johnson is very good. He played very well with Bo Nix, coming out of Oregon, and the kid can.
You're getting him as
absolutely play, like I say, man.
Entire year, but just until Godwin or McMillan comes back, have him for the first 4 weeks. If he does well, you could keep him, but then move him and trade him in week 4. Like if he's coming off a career high game in week 3, move him in week 4 if you can, and then wait it out. Ben Brescia, Cody Bart Graham Barton, Cody Mock, Luke Gadecki. I do like the Bucks' offensive line, but with Wirfs out until week 5, they're going to be in trouble. You just got to hope Baker stays healthy. Rashad White is injured too. So they got Bucky Irving.
If Baker goes down, they are absolutely done.
They've got Bucky Irving, but Sean Tucker's going to be the number 2 back until White comes back. And Ottinger, tight end. I still think the Buccaneers can win the division, but I think they are going to get off to a rough start. Right now, Hall, Villa, and Cansey are back as starters. Desmond Watson's inactive. He's the guy from Florida that weighed 460 pounds. He has not been cleared to practice yet. Yaya Diaby, Hassan Reddick are your outside linebackers. David and Dennis are your Mike linebackers. Levante David, Servato Dennis. Zion McCollum's your number 1 field corner. Jamel Dean's your boundary. Jacob Parrish, 3rd-round pick, is actually ahead of Benjamin Morrison on the depth chart. I am a little surprised by that. Tyke Smith and Antoine Winfield are the starters. Last year, the Buccaneers eased Tyke Smith into things. This year, they're starting him. They're doing the smart thing. And now that Tyke Smith's starting at safety, my objections with the Buccaneers at safety have kind of vanished. I did have some objections initially. But, Buccaneers are the team that I have in the NFC title game.
Yep.
And yeah, I do have the Buccaneers going to the NFC title, losing to Detroit, but they play they play Atlanta on the road, Houston on the road. I think they might lose both those games with their injuries. They could end up beating Atlanta though. Because Atlanta and the Buccaneers both do not have their blind side. So I think that's a low-scoring game. I do think they lose to Houston on Monday night. They should beat the Jets. They're going to lose the Eagles. They should lose to Seattle, even if Wirfs comes back. And then they'll have Wirfs back. And they should have Godwin back by week 6. So I think they beat your Niners. And then they lose the Lions on Monday night. They beat the Saints. And then they get McMillan back.
Man.
They beat the Patriots. They lose the Buccaneers. They lose the Rams. So at this point, the Buccaneers are, because I've got 1-4, 2-4, 2-5, 3-5, 4-5, 4-6, 4-7. So I've got the Buccaneers starting 4-7. They win 3 in a row at home to get to 5-7. They lose to Carolina. They're 5-8. Wait, that cannot be correct. So 2-4, 2-5, 3-5. So they're 4-5, and then they lose 2 in a row to get to 4-7. Then they win 3 in a row. They get back to 500. They lose 2 in a row to drop to 7-9. But as long as they beat the Panthers in Week 18, they still win the division at 8-9, and that's how their season ends. And if they are healthy entering the playoffs and they get Arizona at home, San Francisco at home, the Buccaneers can get to the NFC title game if that's the path they draw and they avoid the Commanders or Eagles. So there is a path for Tampa to get to the NFC title, even at 8-9. It's possible. So, yeah, just gonna put that in perspective.
Agreed.
I've got a 17-0 team losing in the first round in the divisional round, and I've got an 8-9 team in the conference title game. Hell is officially freezing over, ladies and gentlemen.
Love it.
Yep. So
I absolutely love those predictions.
I'm probably going to be wrong on both of those, but it's excellent shock value. It's excellent entertainment. Oh crap! Did I? No, I gotta click on share this tab instead. All right, I'll click on because our audience didn't see the Bucks tab. So I've got the Bucks at 8-9, and I have them making the NFC title game at 8-9. But yeah, I think the Bucks, they're gonna have a run because their strength of schedule is hard, and the injuries they have early in the year are gonna keep them from winning some games. If Godwin and McMillan are out in Week 6, they might lose to San Francisco too. We don't know yet, William, but I think they should do just enough to win the division.
Yeah, for sure. I've got them definitely winning the division, unless Baker goes down, then they're in trouble. But other than that, he's just a very good quarterback and a very good leader. I'll have to
I'm
pardon my
texting Joey
silence.
to
I
see if
was
he actually
wondering what the
wants
hell's
to
going
talk about
across.
anything before we sign off. And then I'm pretty much going to sign off if he doesn't answer. He might be asleep. He might be at work. I don't know. If he's asleep or he's at work, we're just going to end the show. But I'm going to give him the opportunity to speak on some stuff. And if he doesn't respond, we're just going to end the show. Because we've covered everything.
I'm sorry.
All right. So.
Well, I think we've had a very, very information-packed show here this morning. You know, I mean, we got a lot done talking about
Yeah,
this team,
because I did
talking about
not think it
everything
would
else.
be this quick, but I'm happy. It means I get to watch the game on time. Joey gets to watch his Browns game if he's sleeping in, and if he's not sleeping in, he's probably got summoned to work. I don't know. It's his business. I'll let him do his thing. But yeah, we are going to sign off. I'll stop screen sharing now. But yeah, we are going to sign off. That's William Yanish. I'm Chris Ransom. And
Yes, sir. Thank you, everyone, for listening, watching the show, you know, putting up with our shenanigans. Chris only dropped one F-bomb. You know, I mean, that's not bad.
Count hell as a cuss word. That's 2. We'll count that as a half a cuss word, William. We'll count because I said hell is freezing over. So we'll count that as half a cuss word, but not a full cuss word. So 1.5 cuss words.
No. It's a place and a state of mind. Something like that. It's not so bad, you know. And like I said, appreciate everyone who
a nice
who
2-hour show versus our well, it says we've been I've been on TalkShoe for 2 hours, but I think we've only recorded for 1 hour and 55 minutes. But to have a show under 2 hours,
I've got
it actually feels kind of
here.
nice. Feels kind of rewarding.
Yes, sir. I mean, to get something done that quick without the drawn out kind of stuff, you know, I mean, definitely becoming pretty.
And
pretty
you can go to breakfast or you can watch the game. If you get ESPN, you can watch Kansas State, Iowa State, and if you don't, you can go get breakfast somewhere or brunch or lunch.
Oh, I found ESPN on my TV, man. Thanks to Instacart.
So awesome. So you get Kansas State, Iowa State. That's at noon, and we're gonna go have fun and enjoy that game. But
cook some breakfast.
Yeah,
do all that good stuff.
Awesome.
It'll be good.
Later.